Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where it's food as it should be. They have so many of my favorites at Panera Bread, from the wonderful soups and flatbread sandwiches to you're in the mood for a salad. I like to change mine around. They're very accommodating. At Panera, you can also order online. You go to panerabread.com, put in your information, your zip code, find the closest Panera to you, order online, and when you head over there, it will be waiting for you, all paid for. All you have to do is pick it up, and you'll be on your way. Hope to see you at Panera soon. Reading with Robin, also sponsored by Point Street Reading Series, where we meet the third Tuesday of every month to hear from some of my favorite authors. The next one is happening on Tuesday, January 17th at the Village, 373 Richmond Street in Providence. For more information, you can visit my Facebook page, Point Street Reading Series. You can also visit Reading with Robin on Facebook. And now, enjoy the show. It's always a treat to be able to welcome back one of my favorite authors to Reading with Robin. Ayelet Waldman is the author of, I have read in more recent fiction, I have read all of them, Daughter's Keeper, Love and Other Impossible Pursuits. I love that book so much. Red Hook Road, loved. Love and Treasure. I think I took that one on a trip when I was in Europe, so it was especially timely. I adore your work. Yes, your writing, all of it. And when I got your email that you had this new book coming out, I was like, wait a minute, how did I miss this? A Really Good Day hits the shelves today, How Microdosing Made a Mega Difference in My Mood, My Marriage, and My Life. Welcome back to Reading with Robin, Ayelet Waldman.
Oh, Robin, thank you so much for having me back. It's become sort of a way I mark my book publication is by talking to you.
I love it. I love your email was so funny. So what happened? There was a mistake in one of them. I told you I didn't even notice that.
There was a little tag that said like insert funny something here, and I left the insert funny something. It was so
Oh, yeah. That's funny. But don't you think? I mean, one of the things people so admire about you and your readers and your friends and fans alike, it's that honesty. I mean, that's funny. I didn't notice
so.
it.
I don't like it's not volitional, you know. Like I have,
sure.
I call our younger daughter, who's 15 now. We call her the compulsive confessor because when she was a little girl, if she ever did anything bad, she would like run immediately and tell us about it. Like, oh my God! And it was so hilarious because there were these things we would never have found out about, and then she would punish me, and we'd be sitting there trying to decide, like, you know, whether we should. I don't know, you know, give her a timeout for something that we never would have known about.
Right.
But you know, I used to say to Michael, I wonder where she gets this impulse, and he'd be like, "Are you crazy?
That is so
you don't
funny.
know where she gets the impulse?"
When you can directly tie it back to something, I know that. I was recently telling somebody stories, and my son came up, and I was talking about how tenacious he is, and where you just won't, you know, if he wants to do something, might as well skip to that part. And then as I was telling them some other stories, they said, you know, I think I see that connection. And I was like, you know, you realize in talking about things how obvious it can be to people. But I like I said to you in the email, all I noticed was that you had this new book coming out today, January 10th, and that was all. I didn't notice anything. But
good.
I recently sent around an email that I also had put in the subject line, like, for publicists. That was just my way of saving it in the draft folder. I didn't intend to send it out that way, which I did.
Oh, my God.
I know. I just left it. It was the same kind of thing. I just was like, hopefully they wouldn't even notice. But I didn't mean to have that be the subject line. But
right, for publicists.
Yeah, for publicists.
Yeah. No, okay, I had an experience once where Robin, like, I have to keep this clean, right? Because we're on the radio too, not just podcast.
It's podcast. I don't know how clean it has to be, but you know, whatever, as long as it's colorful.
I sent out. I got one of those like nursery school. You know, everybody in the nursery school class gets this email, and I got an email that basically the tagline was "Husbands Deleted." And it was all about Pizza Day and how the writer had taken off the husbands because, you know, those busy men shouldn't have to be to deal with all of this distracting silliness.
Silly pizza, yeah.
And I wrote a reply, and she wrote basically saying, put him back on. If I have to deal with this crap, so does he. And she wrote a reply about how she's a mom who loves her children, and she doesn't think of pizza day as a chore, but rather a privilege. And I forwarded it to my friend Peggy Ornstein, who wrote that wonderful book, Girls and Sex.
Love
and
that.
When I forwarded him, the first line that I wrote, Jesus, and then the F word. Can you effing believe this? But I didn't forward it. I reply all.
Oh, you did?
Code list, yes.
Ayelet. Oh no, that's like my deepest fear.
It's so funny. If you saw it on a TV show, you would be like, that is the dumbest. That never happens. Nobody reply alls when
it happens all the time.
I reply all when I think that I'm calamitous, ridiculous.
Oh, wow. So what happened, Ayelet? Did anybody notice?
Well, I paid the price in humiliation, and I had to apologize. And look, but the thing is, and this is actually really relevant to a really good day.
Yes, I was going to say in reading the book.
Making mistakes and having to apologize for them has kind of been my life. I mean, I feel like my saving grace is that I apologize.
Mm-hmm. Yes, apologies go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't solve it all. It's better not to do the terrible things, but if you do them, at least you apologize. And I think of that across the board, like in terms of my husband, in terms of my kids, in terms of the internet. I try always to take responsibilities for the mistakes I make.
Well, it's so easy to shoot something off impulsively, and especially
if you have a mood disorder, which is characterized by impulsivity. I sometimes feel like those two guys who founded Twitter, they just got together in some basement in Silicon Valley, and they were like, that writer Ayelet Waldman, let's mess with her head. Let's create a medium that will play on all of her worst personality characteristics and her mental illness, and that will create like a series of opportunities for her to make catastrophic internet errors.
Insert really evil laugh here. Well, it's nice to be thought of in any kind of way, right? I mean, it's nice when people are thinking of you.
Because I was the one they were thinking of. I think it was Donald Trump that they were thinking of.
Oh, well, they got the right guy for that job. That's for sure. I know. I can't
totally
even with him. But the idea of having of taking a deep breath before we do things. I mean, I certainly my go-to reaction when I feel wronged or something is ridiculous, I check 10 million times before. I am so afraid of doing that.
See, that's amazing that you do. See, that I think that's a sign of your mental health, right? I mean, that's what was so interesting about this experiment, which I came to out of a place of real desperation. I mean, I'm not a drug user. Well, that's not true. I've used drugs, but not, as I say in my book, more than some people, not as much as Presidents Bush and Obama.
Yeah, I love that. But that's a good measure.
Yeah, exactly. But I've only ever used drugs. I can count on my, on the fingers of both hands the times I've used drugs recreationally. I'm just not interested in recreational drug use. I've used drugs therapeutically, and I came to the decision to try this microdosing with LSD out of a place of real desperation. Mm-hmm. I have a mood disorder. It was very well managed for many years. The end diagnosis that I got was premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which basically means really, really, really bad PMS. Mm-hmm. So there's a treatment protocol for PMDD that's really effective. You take a week of SSRIs right before your period. So in that kind of premenstrual zone, you take this week of SSRIs. And that worked great. But here's the thing about that treatment protocol. It only works if you can predict when you're going to get your period.
Which you can't once you
can't once you become a woman of a certain age.
Once you cross over to the dark place, yes.
Yes. So as soon as I became perimenopausal, I had no idea when I was going to get my period anymore. And I just, somewhere in my late 40s, I was just juggling moods, and I felt like I always had PMS, and things took a really, really bad turn in my life, in my relationship, in my family, and I became more and more depressed, and more, my marriage suffered, and I mean, to say it suffered, that's an understatement. And at some point I realized that I was actually suicidal.
Oh, good.
And I was desperate, and
Sure.
the medications weren't working. Nothing was working. And I had done, for many years, I had worked on drug policy reform issues. I used to be a federal public defender back in the day.
Yeah.
And I had taught law for 7 years as an adjunct professor at the UC Berkeley School of Law. And I taught a class on the legal and social implications of the war on drugs. And so I had this background in drug policy reform, which meant that I sort of had access to all of this research about different treatment modalities. And I had learned about microdosing, and I'd read about it. And suddenly, when I was thinking that I was going to kill myself, I thought, why don't you just try this last desperate thing? And what was amazing, and how this ties back to what we were just talking about, is I think the clearest result of microdosing for me was not the kind of enhanced productivity that a lot of people do it for, which I definitely got, and not even so much the elevated mood, which I also definitely got, but the way that it gave me a little time around my feelings. So that so I could be a little more like you, basically. So that when
you don't want to be
something
a little That's only that was one small example. I could give you a run for your money.
In that way.
But yeah,
so
but
like,
in that way, yeah. I'm just kidding.
But just
to
have that moment between stimulus and reaction, right? The moment between you feel something. Like I always think of it as a sort of four-step process. You feel, you think, you have an urge to act, an impulse to act, and then you act. So those are four really separate things.
Yeah.
But in me, those things happened all at once, instantaneously.
Sure. And
I
you don't have a
felt
control
and I
over that.
Right.
Right.
Without any space between those. And what the microdosing and that month-long experiment with microdosing, what that allowed me to do was to kind of loosen up those four so that they were separate experiences. I felt something. Then I thought about what I felt and actually thought to myself, well, you think you feel angry. Are you feeling angry or are you feeling scared? You know, there would be like this moment to kind of contemplate that. And then I would notice an impulse to act, and I would say to myself, well, you want to send the angry tweet. Is that the right thing to do? And I would really sort of carefully parse out that. And then most of the time I didn't send the angry tweet. I didn't yell. I didn't do the things that have gotten me in trouble before. And it was remarkably effective and remarkable. And I mean, frankly, I have no doubt in my mind that if it were legal and if it were tested, I would be doing it even as we speak. But of course, it's not legal, and it's
so interesting as an attorney, as somebody that studied all this and teaches about the war on drugs and all this. It's such an amazing coming together of all of your talents and expertise. And on the phone is Ayelet Waldman. Visit her site at ayeletwaldman.com. Her book is called A Really Good Day. It's out today, and I was thrilled to see it in one of my very favorite publications, People Magazine, the brand new issue. I flip to it. I have to see which books they're talking about. I've been doing it for years, and I was like, yay, Ayelet's book is right there. So
thank you.
Excited, and a great article on New York Times, in the style section, I think. Is that where it was?
Yeah, in the style section.
Yeah.
And there's a great one in the New Republic this month that I think is my favorite, just because it's a review, and it just engages. It's by this wonderful author named Claire V. Watkins, a young woman writer.
Oh, yes. I saw you posted. Yeah.
And that one, it just engages with the book on so many levels. It's really...
Well, the book it's
exhilarating when a reviewer does that, when you really feel like they're getting your book.
They really get it. Well, I love the way you break down the days, how you're feeling, what's going on. It's incredibly well-researched, and your classic humor comes shining through. Is one of my favorite parts here is about you talk about a conversation with your dad. When I talk to my father, it's less of a conversation than a monologue or a series of mini lectures, kind of like attending a one-man TED conference at the Hebrew Home for the Aged. Hebrew Home for the Aged. I always say
Home for the Aged.
Yeah,
that's my dad. Anything you want to know about, like Stalin's 5-year plan, the history 3-year plan, the history of Zionism, just call my dad. He'll give you all the info you might have been missing.
I can imagine.
A little bit about Theodore Herzl, he'll give it to you.
It's always good to know to go where you want to go and what you want to learn. And when you talk about some of, and the kind of father that you wanted, and sort of the men in your life that you've met or gravitated toward who give that to you, and really seeing your dad maybe in a different way. And that's, to me, what it sounds like the microdosing was able to do, really to clarify some things and to see the sunny side of the moment. While not a miracle, certainly, it sounds like there's no doubt, and you end the book actually saying there's a lot more research to do and a lot more that we need to learn. I mean, of course, I'm reading it thinking, so how illegal could it be? If it works and, whatever, and you get this vial.
Well, look, I'm a public defender, so there's nobody as paranoid as a public defender, so I don't recommend doing something illegal. But, the way it came to me, it was almost impossible to say no. What happened was, I was curious about it. I was interested in it, and I started thinking, all right, well, I'm just going to try this for 30 days. But of course, I'm a middle-aged mom of 4. I don't know how to buy drugs, and even though I live in which was once the hotbed of LSD and psychedelic use in Northern California, even so, what was I going to do? Go down and stand on a street corner shrieking for acid? It just wasn't, and I certainly wasn't going to ask my kids if they knew anybody. That wasn't going to work.
Well, you don't even want to know if they know, right? True.
Right, exactly. So what I ended up doing was just sort of asking people who went to Burning Man and who who I thought might have, be a little more hip, might have a little more experience in that kind of thing. And then eventually I was talking to somebody and telling them I wanted to try it. And he said, oh, yeah, I know this. A friend of mine knows this professor, and he's very elderly, and he's been doing this forever, and I'm sure, he's nearing the end of his life. He probably has LSD. It just sounded like the most ridiculous story to me. I was like, oh, yeah, a professor, an ancient professor is going to give me LSD. Ha, 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 ha. So I just ignored it, and then one day I went out to my mailbox, and I opened up my mailbox, and there was this package festooned with the oldest stamps,
Did you take a picture of this? It just sounds so
I didn't
magical.
take a picture of the package because I became so paranoid. But I have I have what's inside of it. Okay. He wrote a poem for me, and it was, the return address was Lewis Carroll, and inside was this tiny little blue bottle.
Drink me, exactly.
And I tested it. My big message to my kids always is, I have what I like to think of as a harm reduction approach to drug policy with my children. So my major issue is I don't want them to die. So I'm always saying,
exactly.
Cannot
as a mother,
any
we don't want them. Stay alive, please.
Stay alive. So I always say to my kids, you cannot ingest anything you haven't tested, because you can't trust anybody else to test. Some guy says, oh yeah, my friend did that. That's how you end up, dead.
Perfect.
So
I totally get you.
And where I got the testing kit from? Amazon. You can buy LSD testing kits on Amazon, it turns out. Yes, you can. And
you can get it in 2 days, right?
Yeah, prime shipping. So I tested it. It tested. It's told me that it was LSD, and then I embarked on this crazy 30-day experiment.
Amazing to think that that's where you would order the testing kit, though, still.
Right,
when I read that, I was like, you truly can get anything on Amazon.
Yeah, you can get anything.
But right, you have to be careful, and you don't know what you're getting, and all of that, as lovely as the poem you say in the
that's
book.
the thing that's what's so important to me as a mother. I have a whole chapter about this, about how to parent in the age. We're suffering right now from a really terrifying opioid epidemic. And one of the reasons that people keep dying of heroin addicts and prescription drug users is because they don't know what they're taking. So there's
scary.
Lots of instances of fentanyl being substituted for heroin, and fentanyl is much more toxic. And people, OD because they take the amount that they would have taken if it were heroin, but it's fentanyl, so it kills them. And so I have a whole kind of structure of what I tell my kids and how I educate my kids about drugs in order to keep them alive. That's all I want to do, is keep them alive and safe.
Yes.
And and part of, in our family, our harm reduction approach to drug use with our kids involves not lying to them. We never lie to them. We don't lie to them about, what drugs do. We don't lie to them about why people do them, and we don't. And we hope that by being radically honest with them, they'll believe us about the dangers, and they'll take the precautions that can help them, keep them alive.
Well, in my experience, that does work, and I think it's I think those kids come to their parents for honesty and to to be in a healthy family, that they'd be trusted and that they would be listened to and that they could bring their questions to. And it is awfully scary to know what things are, mixed in, laced, cheaper, whatever, goodness knows what happens. It was funny. I was actually at a concert with my daughter recently, and I put my drink down. And she was like, "Why are you putting?" And I didn't think in a million years. I'm old.
Right.
That's
Good
we
girl.
didn't we did not worry about that, right? In the 80s, I don't remember that as a conversation, and we were enjoying.
Well, people weren't slipping roofies into other people's drinks in the 80s
and
90s, and they're doing it. I mean, that does happen. I mean, that's I had my older daughter give my younger daughter was going to a New Year's party, and I had my older daughter give my younger daughter a whole talk about that kind of thing and about how to be an effective bystander and how to protect. So I had all these girls in my car, and my college student daughter basically how to avoid dangerous situations when you go out to a party. And it was great to hear her giving them all that information and to realize that I had done my job right because she knew it. And
absolutely. And
they were so receptive
sibling.
and eager to, exactly. They were so receptive and eager to hear it because it came from this, college girl who they were, idolized.
Exactly, and they're not that far removed from that situation. I know the same thing with my daughter and her cousins. There's that ability to listen. But, we were just innocently at this concert, and I didn't put it too far down. But it did not occur to me that I did put it down. And anyway, so there was, Mom, pick up your drink. Oops, excuse me.
They have the lives they lead are a lot more complicated than the lives we.
Yes.
I mean, on an emotional level.
Everything.
It's all the same, but I think the lives that our children lead nowadays are more difficult and more complicated than the lives we led in the 80s and 90s.
Have to be steps and steps ahead. Yeah, really thinking what could happen, and so in being honest with the kids.
And the internet makes everything worse. Everything, as we saw in recent
No question.
Events.
Absolutely, everything becomes heightened, and so. But you did talk to the kids about your mood and them, seeing what they realized and what did they notice, and you talk about your relationship with your husband.
Well, I didn't tell them. I didn't want to tell my kids, "Oh, Mommy's taking LSD." My kids are always teasing me because they say I'm such a basic mom. Like I'm. That phrase they use, basic bitch. Well, they always say I'm so basic. So I really didn't want to say to them, Mommy's dropping acid, honey. So I just said that I was trying a new medication.
Sure, that makes sense.
Which they're used to. They've seen that a lot.
Right.
If you have a mental illness, you try lots of different treatments.
Yes.
And then at the end of the month, I asked them to give me sort of an assessment of this, how I'd been, and the results were so striking. Unlike anything that had happened before, they were so positive. And the thing that both kind of broke my heart and warmed my heart at the same time was one of my sons said, "You're just so much more fun. Like when I walk in, you make jokes. You're fun to be around. You have this kind of lightness that I missed."
Yeah.
And it was wonderful to hear, but it was also kind of heartbreaking.
Right.
That had not been part of his.
Although the thing
but now
is
they know. Now they know about LSD.
The book's out.
You gotta tell them.
There's that when your mom is an author, but also for your children. And I understand that sense of this is how they felt, and that is sad. But I think on the positive side, certainly them seeing their mother taking care of herself and wanting to be trying different things and being open and understanding about mental illness.
I think that's so important to see. Look, I had my parents. I have a father with bipolar disorder, and I didn't ever have that experience of seeing how hard he struggled. I'm sure he did struggle to be better and feel better, but I never knew that as a child, and I think it would have made a real difference to how I experienced his mental illness if I could have seen that he was struggling to overcome it.
Well, did he have a name for it then, or did he know it then?
Well, there was manic depression was what they called it at first, and then
so
eventually,
he was diagnosed.
Yeah, and then eventually, they redefined it as bipolar disorder. I mean, it was not a secret, and we certainly knew that he was taking medications and stuff, but he wasn't open with us about the efforts he was making to get better and be better, and I think that would have meant a lot to me as a child if he had been.
So then the next generation does better in sharing that and being open about it and making sense of what, as a child, can seem like, erratic and just not making sense, and being the best version of yourself. Children seeing their parents as people as opposed to, just something. Which
is a terrifying moment in the life of a child when you suddenly realize your parents are human beings with struggles and foibles. But it's also that's how you go on to be an adult. Like once you figure out that your parents are flawed people who are nonetheless love you and you love them, then you can, go about becoming your own flawed person with, who nonetheless loves her family. And that's one of the many things we teach them. Who knew it would be so hard when we just got ourselves knocked up, right?
That was the easy part. I'm on the phone with Ayelet Waldman. A really good day hits the shelves today. I know I always say it would be nice if they would come with little tags that would explain some of their personality, some of the things that they'd be in need of. It would save so much time and energy to just be able to figure that out, and that's part of really the process. And also,
I wish I came with a tag. I need my own tag, to explain, if because one of the things about having a mood disorder is that it takes a long time to figure out that you have one, and it takes a long time to figure out what helps you, if some people never do. And I wish, unfortunately, psychiatry is just not developed as much as we think it is, and the treatments that they have don't actually work the way we hope they will often. And so
a lot of hit or miss.
I wish I had my own operating instructions manual, my own FAQ.
Right, when you get a bed and it says not to remove the tag off that bed for whatever reason, people should come with tags that are not removable, so people could just go, you just sort of reach around and go, oh, okay, well, this makes sense, and also sort of being open to what makes for a fuller life and relationships and all of that. But I always just think when people are exploring and are open to learning what's going on and try things, that is a brave thing to do, as opposed to just, well, this is just how I am, and people get pushed away on the other end of that. So, and all of the, you talked also about being mindful and what mindfulness is, and that's part of what the microdosing allowed for you. So
it really was amazing. Here I've been trying to achieve this through, we get hectored so much about mindfulness now, everything from eat a raisin mindfully to raise your children mindfully to, and I had just never been, I just couldn't master meditation. Mindfulness just I didn't get it. And what the microdosing did is allow me to experience life in a slightly more mindful way. And I and that's what I've been doing since that month expired, and since I gave myself a month to do that. I've been trying to find that in other ways, in a kind of, I have a new therapy that I'm working on now called dialectical behavioral therapy, that's kind of a combination of mindfulness and traditional cognitive behavioral therapy. That seems to be working really well for me right now. And it's all about trying to replicate that feeling. But I wish there were research. I wish these drugs were legal. I mean, we're seeing remarkable results with psychedelic drugs now. There's research going on at Johns Hopkins, at NYU, at UCLA Harbor, specifically on psilocybin, which is a drug very similar to LSD and one that has kind of less social baggage, using psilocybin to treat the anxiety and depression experienced by people confronting the end of life, so cancer patients and others who are dying.
You wrote about that. And then is there like a shelf life to that? So like even the microdosing that you did, you just published the book, so I don't know how long ago that was, but does that continue to stay in your system, or at this point, no, so you're mimicking the effect?
No, it's not in my system. But, the psilocybin results are amazing. Like 1 or 2 doses, in a guided experiment have long-term positive effects on people's lives. and especially positive effects on their deaths. Like they experience death in a really different way. That research is really exciting and remarkable and really comforting, when for the this kind of existential terror of death, to know that there's a way, a kind of treatment to help handle that is really comforting.
Well, it shouldn't be so god-awful. I mean, you got to go, but, why can't it be a little bit better? I think that in reading this, really, and I'm on the phone with Ayelet Waldman, please visit her website, ayeletwaldman.com. You can find her on Twitter, and you can find her on Facebook. I'm laughing. We were just talking about Twitter and Instagram. But I think that I found a lot of hope in reading the book, and just I can imagine, we were going to talk, too, about all of the people you must be hearing from. But I could see you, giving testimony up there in Washington and maybe Washington
they're so
now.
Receptive to that now.
I forgot what Washington.
Right? 4 to 8 years.
I forgot the Washington to which I was referring. But
that's what's so sad is that we actually were beginning to have a more sane approach we were beginning to recognize across political boundaries, across the spectrum, that the war on drugs wasn't working, that it was causing more harm than it was helping, that the only people it was helping were these massive criminal enterprises. Those are the only people who benefit from the war on drugs, the cartels, the drug dealers. Everybody else suffers from the way that we combat this war on drugs. There was a real growing consensus about that, from the UN to the Republican Party. And Jeff Sessions, who will be our new Attorney General, is a retrograde ignoramus on issues of drug policy. And
he'll fit right in then, won't he?
I mean, it's horrifying what he's going to do. He believes in fighting the drug war in the way that it's been fought, that's cost so many lives and has done nothing but enrich the Cali cartel and the Sinaloa cartel. He believes in throwing people in jail who are addicts. He believes that we have enough people in jail. He believes that smoked marijuana, including all of the people in the states where it's legal who use it for medical reasons, are quote-unquote not good people. And this, hundreds of millions of Americans apparently are not good people.
Of course.
And this is the person who's going to be running our Justice Department. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
In my worst nightmares, I imagine him prosecuting me for this book. I hope that I know he's going to have
sell so many extra books, Ayelet.
Yeah, I know, but Orange is the New Black has already been written.
Yeah,
and when your kids are teenagers, it's pretty good to be home with them.
It is. So, all right. Never mind that part then. All right. We'll have to just tell everybody the other way.
I do get afraid. I'm my darkest fears are that that's going to happen to me. But, if someone as privileged as I, with privilege comes the responsibility to speak in place of people who aren't privileged. So, I'm taking a position that has to do with the war on drugs. It has to do with mental illness. It has to do with the way we treat people who are mentally ill and the way we treat, the way we think about medication. And it's a risk I have an obligation to take because I'm in a really privileged position.
Well, and
so
you are.
Come visit me, Robin, if I end up in prison.
I absolutely will. I will.
I keep saying I'll just read. If I can just read,
I will do.
Then
I
I'll
will
be fine.
absolutely do my part. I know. Doesn't it sound a little cozy? That little bit of a respite, but no. We know everybody that listens to Reading with Robin knows that's my sense of humor, and I am kidding.
Yes,
but I would absolutely. I would have. But I think that it is so important. This book is important for so many reasons, and also to have such an educated, on top of that, your legal background and all of what you've done and what you share, and you and your husband and your beautiful family. I just think that that's, the voices that will be heard. And I live in hope, and I know this book is going to mean a lot of things to a lot of people, and I will be talking all about it. And also visit ayeletwaldman.com to see if she'll be speaking near you. You have a nice event list there. You have
I'm traveling all over the country. I'm going to be in Boston. I'm going to be in both Portlands, Maine and Oregon, and D.C. and New York and Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And all of the states.
LA, so.
Yes, may you be in all happy states. So, and just before I let you go, because the book just came out, though, but what are you hearing, and are you receiving? I can imagine you could be answering
responses
all day.
The responses have been really incredible. I mean, the thing that I really need to figure out how to handle now is I'm hearing a lot from people in pain, people who are, have mental illness and who are suffering terribly. And I have to, I'm not a doctor. And I don't recommend illegal drugs. I really don't. I mean, I was in a place of desperation, so I did this experiment. But this, these things are illegal. You could get prosecuted. And moreover, in a legal drug market, who knows what you're taking? I mean, you have to test your drugs, and there's no guarantee that what you're getting is safe. And so I feel like there are far more risks associated with this than most people should take. But I do want to, if I've taken this public a position on issues about mental health, I have an obligation to reach out a sympathetic ear and recommendations. And my recommendations, though I'm not a doctor, can't be medical, but they are to seek help and to seek the support of your family and to keep trying to get better, because that's the only way.
And to not keep it to yourself, right? To share, to
share,
question
to get
people.
the support you need.
And while you're not a doctor, somebody with as much experience as you have, practical experience, and are so knowledgeable, these are the kind of people I like to go with, for questions, because
right.
you know what you're talking about.
And sometimes the best person, I mean, I know I look for support from people who've gone through the same thing, because we can pool information and we can share experience, and sometimes that's the most helpful thing that you can find.
I love talking to you. I'm so excited for you and this new book and all the conversation and help that it will spark. A really good day. Visit Ayelet at ayeletwaldman.com. Until the next time, and I hope that I will see you soon and on this tour.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Bye-bye.